come, the tin. The tin done they come, the tin. The tin done they come, the tin. The tin done they come, the tin. Hello everyone and welcome to Doing Art episode 3. This episode is with singer-songwriter Kosi. Before I proceed, I'd like to thank everyone who wrote in to tell me how they've liked the podcast so far and who have given me some very, very important feedback, very helpful feedbacks so far. Please make sure to subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. Guess what? When you subscribe, whenever a new episode comes out, you don't even need to do anything. The episode just shows up on your iPhone or your computer or your tablet or your phone, any phone you use. So all you got to do is just subscribe. You get the podcast free of charge. All right. And you know what? If you also subscribe, this is the only way I can tell that somebody is listening to the podcast. This way I know that there's a reason to keep making the podcast. Come talk to me on Facebook. Come friend me on Facebook. Come talk to me on Instagram. Come talk to me on Twitter. My handle is the same thing, Lorens Chuno, on each and every one of them. You can also visit my website, connect with me on my website, email me. My website is lorenschuno.com or the website of the podcast, doingart.net. All right. This is a very special episode of the podcast because Kosi comes bearing a set of novelties. She's the first woman I'm having on the podcast. This is a very big deal for me. Secondly, she is the first native New Yorker I'm having on the podcast. This is also a big deal because the podcast is based in New York. Thirdly, I have known Kosi, but this is the first time I'm sitting down to have a conversation with her. And I'm very, very happy that the conversation went really well. I really enjoyed this conversation. All right. Kosi is a very, very experienced and very hardworking independent musician. I actually learned a few things from her during the conversation. And after listening to the conversation again, I can summarize Kosi with one word. She is real. R-E-A-L. She is very real. In addition to this, she is very passionate about her art, and I've mentioned she's very experienced. And you can hear all this in her music. She just connects when you listen to her music. After listening to the conversation, if you want to learn more about Kosi, you can just go to the website of the podcast, doingart.net. All right, ladies and gentlemen, she is passionate, she is real, she is Kosi in your face. Kosi, welcome to the show. Welcome to Doing Art. I don't know if I'll call it a show or if the technical name is a show or a podcast, but I guess whatever.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. As I was telling you earlier, this is a special episode for me because this is the first time I have a New Yorker, a native New Yorker on the podcast. And the first time, I'm having a conversation on this podcast with somebody that I don't really know a lot about. You know, somebody I've just met once, and I kind of like their art. You were telling me something about New York being filled with non-New Yorkers. Do you want to say more about that?
Well, I mean, New York is full of I feel like there's about maybe 150 to 200 native New Yorkers in New York at any given time.
Interesting.
And everybody else. It's kind of interesting because, you meet these people who are just like, oh, yeah, I'm a New Yorker. I've been here 30, 40 years. But they're, they were born in like Virginia or something.
Do you think, like, being a native New Yorker, do you think native New Yorkers feel a certain way about that? About their city being for a lack of a better word, overthrown, overtaken, overtaken by non-native New Yorkers?
I don't think so. I kind of feel like, in a lot of ways, numerically speaking, of course, we are most likely in a minority. And also, this city has historically been, the place where people come to.
City. Exactly.
And so I always tell people, I feel like I'm at a disadvantage because I will never know the experience of coming to New York.
Disadvantage. Wow. That's a different, that's like it. I never thought about it like that. I've only been in New York.
That's because you know the experience of coming to New York, and I do not.
Like a year. And each time, before I even moved to New York, I would tell myself, if only I was born in New York. If I were born in New York, the things I would have achieved in my life, the things I would have done, all the things that I had wanted to do, I would have been doing them from the age of 5.
That's not the case at all for most of us. For a few of us, maybe, but that's not the case for most of us.
I see. So, like in your circle of friends, let's do kind of a very watered down statistics. In your circle of friends, what percentage would you say are New Yorkers?
That's a goal. First, before I can do that, I have to go ahead and deconstruct what you mean by friend and what I mean by friend.
All right. What about your circle of friends / acquaintance / people I talk to / musicians I hang out with?
Well, I would have to say that probably a vast majority of them are not from New York. Although I did find out recently, because I just put a band together for the next project I'm doing, and literally everyone in the band is a native New Yorker.
Interesting.
And I thought about that for a second. It's like, have I ever seen this many native New Yorkers all in one place?
It's like a new phenomenon for you. You're like, wow, has this been in existence? And I never experienced it before.
Well, I can't say I never experienced it before because I went to elementary school in New York. And in a New York City elementary school, most of us will have
New Yorkers. Okay, I see.
I mean, like my best friend right now is somebody that I went to high school with. He's also a native New Yorker. But, in high school, it's going to be a slightly different case than, once you get to be an adult and you meet people who moved to New York when they were 21 or 25 or 30, etc.
Right. I want to continue on this New York thing because I want to learn from you. Okay. I've heard this over and over again since God knows when, that people in New York are not friendly. But now I'm going to say something. Since I moved to New York, I've changed. I never believed in it anyway. I never thought about it a lot. But I've discovered that I think the native New Yorkers are usually friendly. They're usually willing to help. They're usually ready to help. Of course, New York is a fast-paced city. So everybody lives in that spirit of just going about their daily business. But the native New Yorkers, I kind of, from my experience, are nicer than the people who move here trying to get what they can get as quickly as possible, So I don't know if you, as a native New Yorker, do you want to destroy my session? Do you want to dismantle my assertion, or do you want to defend? Do you want to stay in that same line and defend your city and say, "Oh, native New Yorkers are nice people"?
Well,
are nicer than non-native New Yorkers?
Well, like I said, I never noticed that distinction, but it has been my experience that New Yorkers are actually quite nice people, and I think people who say that New Yorkers are not nice people. There's two things going on there. One of them is that, like you said, the pace of life is just fast. And, New Yorkers aren't mean. We're just busy. And so if we don't have time to help you, we're not gonna.
Really? Yeah, definitely.
But if you catch one of us, on an off day, or we just happen to have a few minutes to spare, we're fantastically nice people, just as nice as anyone else in this country.
Yeah.
The other thing is that I feel like a lot of the time, people who come to New York, they'll come to New York for like a few days or a week, and they'll go to all of the spots that everyone tells you that you have to go see in New York, and you'll just chock full of, all these tourists in Times Square. Times Square is a really horrible place for this. That's where you get all the, all the grifters and, all the people who are just like out to rob you and this, that, and the third. And I think part of it is that people just have a tendency to act that way in Times Square because that's what's expected of them.
That's where
people
they believe everything goes, anything goes.
Yeah, people come to New York with the expectation that New Yorkers are just going to be mean and rude and robbers and whatever. And, you go to Times Square and you get that experience because that's basically the experience that you're paying for. You're paying to, have people curse at you and this, that, and the third. But native New Yorkers avoid Times Square like it's the plague.
I know.
Because there's really very little good reason to be
go to
there.
Times Square.
Like I've actually had the experience where it's just like I wanted to take a really long walk on a nice, summer night or whatever, and I'll start downtown. And, let's say my destination is really far uptown, and I'm just like, I've got time, I can walk it. And then I realize, oh shit, I fucked up. I got to walk through Times Square to get there.
I see what you're saying.
But then by the time you get to the other side of Times Square, it's just like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good. I want to kind of switch gears like real quick, but I want to pick up from something you mentioned. You mentioned you were putting a band together.
Yes.
Right.
I did say that.
You did say that. Okay. Now, before we talk about that, I've looked at your website once or twice, I think, but not lately, because whenever I want to talk with somebody on the podcast, I try to avoid learning more about the person.
It's counterintuitive, but okay.
Yeah, but it works for me. Trust me. All right, you're putting a band together, but when I looked at your website, I saw like 3 or 4 different bands that you work with.
Yeah.
So when you say you're putting a band together, does it mean that all your bands are like transient and most all your bands are like project based? And like, do you want to talk? Maybe we should just talk more about all the different things you're involved with, all the different bands you're involved with, and talk about it. And then maybe we can come back. We'll come back to the project and the band you wanted to talk about, and then maybe after that we can talk about your solo thing. Right. Okay.
Well, first I want to go ahead and put this into 2 different categories.
Oh, okay.
Because on my website I've got, and I don't really distinguish between them in any kind of meaningful way on the website. And I don't know if that's a pro or a con, but there are projects led by me, and then there are projects that I'm part of.
Okay. I like the name Sweet Blue Fire.
It is a good name.
That's a good name. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you. But
that is not a project.
I remember that. I didn't want to forget it. Yeah.
That is a fantastic name. We actually as a group got together and did a poll as to what we were going to name the band. I'm not even going to tell you what the band was named before because it's embarrassing. But that project is led by Brendan Biaggi, who is a saxophone player, fantastic saxophone player, somebody I went to college with, who I think is a native New Yorker.
Oh.
But that's only because I knew him when he was like 19.
I see.
So that makes me think that he was probably, born and raised in New York as well. But the other band that you probably saw that I was part of is called the Goddess Lakshmi, which is a rock band.
Another good name.
No one who knows me, wearing my jazz hat ever believes that I'm in a rock band.
I was going to talk about that.
Which is funny because no one who ever sees me as part of the Goddess Lakshmi ever believes that I'm a jazz singer. So it's
interesting.
Because they're like 2 completely different things. And that project is led by Renee Calvo, who is the other lead singer of the band and also a guitar player.
Good. I wanted to talk more about your role in each of the bands.
Okay.
So let's start with the Goddess Lakshmi.
The Goddess Lakshmi.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of I have kind of a strange role in that band because I'm not the leader of the band, but I am the lead singer more than half of the time. And so it gets, and especially when you consider that, you know, the band is named after a goddess and I'm the only female on the band, people are just like, oh, so you must be the goddess. And I'm just like, actually, no, I'm not. Renee is the goddess. And actually, recently we got into a discussion about that. He's like, no, I've decided I'm not the goddess anymore. You are. And I'm like, but you're the leader of the band. And, you know, the band does all original compositions that were all written by him.
Wow.
And
both music and lyrics.
Yeah.
Okay.
Music and lyrics were all written by him. And, you know, we meet at his house to rehearse, and he books all the gigs and tells us where they are. And
Nice.
you know,
wow,
we
That's good.
show up and
That is good.
do it.
That's
you
a
know,
good.
learn all of his music and everything. But it becomes kind of strange because people just kind of assume that I'm in charge, and I'm like, actually, no.
How does he feel about that? How is that dynamics working out? Because sometimes once somebody starts getting, you don't have to talk about this if you don't want to, but once maybe the lead singer starts getting a lot of attention, and if the person is not actually the leader, some band leaders are really cool with that. They don't have any problem with that. Some others, they start maybe
ego tripping.
Yeah, looking for a way to kind of let everybody know that they're still in charge.
He actually has done the exact opposite of that.
Wow.
Once he realized that, because I sing backup on a number of the songs too, and once he realized that I was getting a lot of attention, that I was, you know, being a kind of a major draw, he started giving me some of his leads. I suppose, you know, in order to make me an even bigger draw. That's
amazing. I would like to have him on the podcast. Yeah.
I'll give you his contact information later.
Yeah. Now, let's talk about Sweet Blue Fire.
I'm not sure what to say about that because I haven't really seen most of the members of the band since our album release party last year in June. We released our first album. And I mean, it's a great album. It's a fantastic album, but you know, we haven't had any gigs or anything like that.
What was your role in the album? Like, you were the main vocalist.
Well, I was the only vocalist.
Okay.
But
how about writing the songs?
I wrote one of the songs.
Okay.
I can't remember the name of it now. But the blues, the last one on the album, the blues, I wrote that. And there was one other one. Huh?
Is it the Hoboken Blues?
No. That's a different album.
That's a different album.
That's a different album.
Because I remember a song has the name Hoboken, the word Hoboken in it in one of your songs.
You know, that was my album. That was not Sweet Blue Fire.
We're going to talk about your album.
That was a project that I was the leader of. But for some reason, I'm thinking, hey, God damn it, things have got to change. But that's Cal Massey. I did not write that. Anyhow, no, it is a fantastic album, and you know, the leader of the band, like I said, Brendan, he wrote almost all the songs except for two. One of them was written by me, and the other was written by the bass player Andre. But he wrote all the songs. He did all of the arrangements, and they're complicated. You know, they're complicated arrangements, and you know, they're kind of. It's really like, and he was really trying to like bring jazz back into the mainstream while still retaining the intellectualism that jazz has come to have. And I feel like he did a really good job of that.
I should listen to the whole album.
Yeah,
it's out? Is it out there?
It's available on
it's
available on CD Baby.
Okay.
And I think it might also be available on Amazon. I'm not entirely certain, but I know it's available on CD Baby.
Okay. Wow. Now, I want to talk about the other one is Kosi and Ryan, but we'll come back to that later on. But I want to talk about the two bands you just mentioned. They're the bigger bands, and most of in both of them, you were the only female, right?
No, Sweet Blue Fire. The piano player is a female. The piano player that's on the album is a female. She's not our normal piano player. but Brandon got her to stand in because the piano player we normally played with couldn't make it. But she's also a female.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Now, you talked about putting a band together. Having put a band together, I know how difficult that can be. You know, how sometimes you get one person or you get two people. By the time you get the third person, one of the first two people have abandoned the project. And it's just tough getting everybody to rehearse too, and all those things. You have two different perspectives. You've been in a band where you were not like the person organizing all those things. You were just a member of the band, like the lead vocalist, and now you're about to lead a band, to put a band together. I'm going to ask you a sexist question. You ready?
And I will give you a sexist answer.
Okay. Do you think being a female band leader, that the musicians will be more prone to or will be more likely maybe to take you seriously than another guy? The C, you know, because all your musicians, are they all female? Are they all males? The musicians you're trying to have together now?
They are all male.
They are all male. Okay. So what's the dynamics? That's another way. That's a more sugar-coated way. But I wanted to know that. I wanted to know if I were a girl, whether life would have been easier for me as a musician. That's not what I wanted to know.
Well, that's a difficult question for me to answer because I've never been a man.
Yeah, no, but you've seen a man lead a band, you know, and maybe if you're close enough, you would know the kind of difficulties, you know, that he's maybe encountered. But I guess I would like to know what you faced, like the problems you faced in trying to put this band together, or maybe any setback, any setback, and how. Yeah, just tell me about putting the band together.
What's interesting is that I have definitely faced sexism when dealing with band members and whatnot. But I haven't dealt with that, at least not so far. I haven't dealt with that when it was my band, when it was a band that I was in charge of.
Interesting.
Usually, if it's a band that I'm in charge of, you know, and maybe it might just be a personality thing as well.
Yeah.
Because if I'm putting the band together, then I know I'm the one paying you. And so if something happens that I don't like, I can replace you. And I don't feel the need to, you know, to really harp on that too much. Like I don't feel the need to, forgive my language, you know, wave my dick around. It's not necessary. You know, if I like your attitude and I like how you play, then I will pay you to do what you do.
Exactly.
And if I don't like those things, I will simply not do that.
Exactly.
You know, like you can just leave the band, basically. And especially considering, you know, the way I did so far both of my albums and the one I have coming up, the way I did them is that I don't have a band that's like, you know, this is my band, and you know, I don't really expect long-term loyalty. If there is long-term loyalty, I appreciate it.
Yeah.
But I don't expect it. I tell people, you know, this is how long the project is going to last, and I need you from point A to point B. And beyond that, it's all a new contract. And so if you can't do the next one, that's fine. I'll find somebody else for the next one. And so when you when you keep that in mind, it's a lot easier to not get hung up over, you know.
Where did that come from? Is it just out of your experience playing, doing music?
I'm not entirely certain where it came from. I think on some level it might have come from a bit of commitment phobia on my part. that you did, interestingly enough, mention the Kosi and Ryan project, which doesn't exist anymore. And one of those things was that, it was one of those things where Ryan just really wasn't willing to commit to the project. And how my first album ended up happening was my first album was supposed to be a Kosi and Ryan album. And the dynamic between me and him was very different from the dynamic between me and Aaron. Aaron is, and I'm not saying this to put him down or anything like that, because he's a fantastic guitar player and he's a fantastic guy, but he's basically an employee. I give him the
Ryan?
music and,
You mean Ryan or
No,
Aaron?
Aaron.
Okay.
I give him the music and he plays it and I pay him. Whereas Ryan was more of a collaborator, and it was supposed to be, and it worked for a while. It was supposed to be one of those things where we kind of like fed off of each other's strengths, but it got to a point where his schedule, he just wasn't able to do it anymore. And then I realized I couldn't really rely on him to be there where he wasn't able to be there. And so when my first album came out, it was just like, okay, this is going to be my album, and I'm just going to get somebody to do the things I can't do, and I'm going to pay somebody to do the things I can't do. And it just basically happened. And then when I did my second album, it's just like, okay, so now I'm going to pay more people to do the things that I can't do.
I see what you're. I see. I totally get it. Yeah, I have had the pleasure to be able to just the opportunity to be able to hire musicians as I please, like hire them on project based. And if they end up being long-term, if the relationship ends up being long-term, I really appreciate it and I'm happy about it. And if it's not, I've learned to not dwell on it. Yeah. And but that's only possible when you are really sure that you can pay the musician each time.
Right.
So you talked about paying musicians, and that's not something you hear a lot of people who are not on the Billboard chart saying, like people who are not Beyonce saying, because I feel like if you have musicians, sometimes you get some free gigs, some gigs that you really want to do and they're free, So do you pay your musicians each time? And if you continue to pay them, I feel like they would have this mindset of, hey, we're going to make money each time we play with Kosi. Has it been like that? Or what I'm trying to say is, do you try to pay your musicians whether you make money or not?
Yes, I always pay the musicians whether I make money or not. And
I've used that model once.
It's actually been the case where, I've taken, for example, a free gig in a coffee shop where I was allowed to pass around a tip jar, and the amount that I agreed to pay my guitar player was more than the amount I made up in tips. But that's a very serious thing with me for two reasons. One is that, like you were saying before, sometimes people can be difficult to work with, and money makes a difference.
Yes.
When you're
money
able to
makes
say,
things clear.
When you're
makes the
able to say,
relationship clear.
look, I want you to do this because I'm paying you. Then that makes a difference, than to saying, I want you to do this because, we're buddies, or, because I used to babysit your kids, or whatever the case is, because I don't necessarily have those relationships with,
Exactly.
with the people I want to work with. But if you can say, look, I need you to do such and such, and this is what I'm going to pay you. And even as far as that's concerned, because, as a band leader, the money more often than not comes directly out of my pocket. And so I'm not even able to pay my musicians as much as I believe they're worth. I believe they're,
True. Exactly. Yeah.
I believe they're worth a certain amount, but, I only have a certain amount. And so there's kind of like this whole mental push-pull here. It's just like, well, this is all I got. This is all I can do. But I think the presence of something rather than nothing makes a huge difference.
It makes a huge difference. And the fact that you try to be consistent with it, whether you make money or not, I think that makes a huge difference also.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I've actually heard stories about, people who, they'll call the band and they're like, oh, yeah, if we make money on this gig, then I'll give you a percentage of it. And, of course, what that usually means is that you're not going to get paid anything. Or if you do, you'll get paid. Like, I actually talked to a person who did a 2-hour gig, and literally at the end of the gig, just because of how many people were in the audience versus how many people were in the band, walked away with $6, which is like, that's almost like you may as well have just said it was a free gig. If you're going to get paid if you're going to get paid $6, you know what I mean? That's not even 3 rides on the subway, But I kind of feel like, just having some kind of money, it makes people treat you. It makes people treat you different. And the other thing is that, I believe that, and this is not to say that I haven't taken free gigs or that I wouldn't take free gigs, because obviously I've just told you that I have. But I believe that musicians are, professionals and should be paid for what they do.
Of course.
Of course. And, you see all of these, memes floating around on Facebook, just like, oh, would you ask your plumber to work for no money, this, that, and the third.
And it's so true.
But, you have all of these people who just kind of like, it's just the general expectation. It's like, oh, they're musicians. They don't need to get paid.
Exactly.
They don't have rent. They don't need to eat. They don't have children, But I feel like insofar as I can, even if I can only a little bit, to the extent that I can, I should. It's just, it's the morally right thing to do. We live in a capitalist society.
Exactly.
Everybody needs money.
Definitely. Right.
And so, every time I'm trying to think of when was the last time I asked somebody to play for free. I remember now. The last time I asked somebody to play for free, it was right after Hurricane Sandy, and I was doing a series of benefit concerts.
Oh, I see.
And so what I did was, when somebody asked me about payment, I told them, look, I'm going to be collecting donations for this particular charity, and if you need a percentage of it, tell me what percentage you need, and I'll give it to you. And as soon as I said that, they were just like, don't even worry about it. You see what I'm saying?
That's like straight up. This is where I'm coming from. Whether you like, if you don't like it, just tell me now. That's good.
They were just like, don't even worry about the money. If it's for charity, go ahead. I'll do it if it's for charity. But other than that, like since then, I have not once asked somebody to play for free. I've asked somebody to play for less than I think they were worth. But I've never asked somebody to play for free.
Like all my gigs in New York so far have been solo gigs. So I'm actually learning a lot from you, because when I lived in New York and in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, I did this same thing that you're talking about. I tell them, this is how much I'm going to pay you. Usually I don't know for New York, but in Pittsburgh, I try to make sure each gig they get, at least. So I've played a gig where I didn't make any money, and I ended up paying them from my bank account, from my rent money, and then I've been lucky enough to get a gig where I made not a lot of money, maybe more than $5, and technically I was supposed to give them just $5 because that's our agreement, that I gave them more. So I feel like the presence of money, that consistency in paying them a certain amount is really good. And whenever you are able to increase it by any little amount, I think they really appreciate it. Musicians really appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. I want to talk about your music.
Okay.
I want to start by mentioning the 2 songs I really like. One of them, you won't be surprised, Already Know. I like it. I like the song. Anybody who doesn't like that song is just a hater, Another one I like is A Little Sunflower. I can't remember the melody. I don't think the melody is as defined as the Already Know, but I just love it. Like
I think
how
it's really interesting that you mentioned Little Sunflower because I completely forgot that I had a recording of that. That's one of those things where it's like
it sounded kind of live, but I don't know.
It was live.
Okay.
I was on a gig. I brought a tape. No, I didn't have the tape recorder. Someone else had a tape recorder and not a tape recorder, but you know what I mean. And recorded the gig, and this was like maybe like 5 years ago. And I was just like, oh, yeah, that's a good recording. You should give it to me. And that was one of the first recordings that I had on my website simply because this was before I had recorded any of my albums with any of the band projects I'm in or solo or anything. And so I was like, well, this is what I got. And so that's going on the website. And I actually totally forgot it was still there. So,
yeah,
so
I really like the song. I love the song. Yeah.
Thank you.
Let's talk about Already Know. You wrote that yourself?
Yes, I did write that one.
I want to talk about that song.
Okay.
Because it's the first song. It's the main video you have on your web is it's on your website. Like once somebody opens your website,
that's right now. That's the only song that I have an official music video. For.
Oh, okay. So I don't know. Do you want to say anything about this song?
What, you want to know the story?
Oh yeah, you can tell me the story. I want to know.
Well, okay. That song is actually, well, before I say that, I should say that there are a few songs that I have that are not about what people think they're about.
It happens to every musician.
Yeah. And some of that is purposeful, just because people like to hear love songs, right? And
but can I ask you a question about that? Do you explain, take the time to say, oh no, this song is about this, or do you just let them make out a meaning for themselves?
In general, if somebody asks me a question, then I'll give them an answer.
Yeah.
And if not, then
Okay.
It is like I don't feel it necessary to go out of my way to explain something that doesn't need to be explained. But if you want to know, I can tell you.
Like I've met people who came to me and told me something that my song meant to them, and in my mind I'm going, no, that's not what it means. But I so appreciate the fact that they were able to make out a meaning for themselves, and after a while, sometimes I even end up going with their meaning. I'm like, okay,
sure, why not? Yeah, I've heard a lot of interesting interpretations of the songs I've written, especially once you start actively submitting your stuff to critics.
Yeah.
And then you hear what those particular people have to say, and you're just like, wait, how did you... But I mean, it's valid,
Yeah.
If that guy's thinking it, someone else is thinking it.
He's thinking about it, exactly, yeah. One other thing I do is I listen to songs in a language that I don't understand at all, and then I make meanings.
Yeah.
I make out like a different meaning. I'm like, this is what this song is talking about. And I don't know if you know Angelique Kidjo.
Yes.
Okay, I listen to her a lot. And she sings in these African languages that I don't understand, I don't speak, but I always make meanings.
You mean Africans don't speak every African language?
You want to start something now? I know.
I'm sorry. I'll behave myself.
I'm sure you've been asked that a lot of times. Yeah. I'm sure some people have come to you and be like, your parents are Africans, you don't speak African?
Yeah. Say something to me in African.
Yeah. All right. Already know. I'm going to let you talk about it now.
Okay. Well, that song, I kind of wrote it as a love song, even though the inspiration for it didn't come from that kind of a relationship at all. That song was actually about Ryan, we mentioned earlier. And,
is it the guy in the video? Was it?
No, the guy in the video is a gentleman named Ian, who is an actor. Okay. And a fantastic actor who is not a native New Yorker, but moved here from Virginia.
Okay.
That song happened one time. I went over to Ryan's house because that was where we used to rehearse, and I don't remember now why I was there. I wasn't there for a rehearsal. I must have been there to get something or pick up something I had left behind or something like that. And anyhow, we got into a conversation where it's like you get into a conversation where one person is speaking in Yiddish and the other person is speaking in Italian, and we were just completely missing each other.
Yeah.
And he said something that I thought was an insult, which he didn't mean as an insult at all, because he was talking about something completely different. And so I basically cursed him out and ran away. And I realized at that moment, because this actually was near the end of our partnership, that I just kind of felt like this is how it's gonna end.
This is it, yeah.
You know, we're pretty much gonna be over soon. And so, I got on the R train and made the long trek back into Manhattan, and I don't remember if I was crying or trying not to cry, but basically this song happened on the R train on the way back from.
Wow, interesting.
And I just kind of like turned it into a situation where people would assume that it was a romantic relationship, even though it wasn't. Because and that's, people like to hear about that.
Anybody listening to that song would, so are all your songs though. But I wanted to say that song, once I started listening to it, I'm like, this song has an origin, and that's a gift. I have to say, we're going to talk more about your songwriting, but I think that's a gift to be able to just listen to somebody's song and feel it, and at the same time know that this person is really honest, because a lot of artists are not honest with their art, and that could be, I don't know, but I think I prefer honesty to dishonesty. Yeah,
I have a hard time with honesty actually, because honesty is based in the truth, and the truth changes. And people say that the truth doesn't change, but yes, the truth changes.
But
there are songs that I've written about, people that I dated like 3-4 exes ago, that it's like, it was true when I wrote it, but like, for example, there's a song on my first album called Once and Future. And when I wrote that song, I can even remember where I was when I wrote that song. It was because I was absolutely 100% in the mindset that, this is not over. We're going to get back together. All the problems you have with me, I understand it. I accept it. I can change. We're going to make this work. And needless to say, this was like 5 years ago. No, not even 5 years ago, like 7-8 years ago, I wrote this. Yes, it's over. And and the song keeps saying, it's not over, it's not over, it's not over. And I keep singing the song too, but it's like, this is like, now it's a lie. You know what I mean?
You're venturing into a territory that I'm very interested in. I'm becoming interested in just instantly. You and Ryan, it wasn't romantic, as you mentioned, but first of all, you talked about when that he said something you thought was he meant it as an insult, but it turned out he didn't.
Right.
How did you, when you got angry and left, how did you end up finding out that he didn't mean it that way?
I mean, we had another conversation at a later date.
And you forgave him?
Well, it wasn't even a matter of forgiving him, because what I thought he had said was not what he said.
Did you feel bad? Did you feel bad then?
About storming out on him?
Yes.
Yeah, and he was confused as shit. He was like, "What is she so angry about?" And then, like, when we talked about it, he was like, "Oh, is that why you got so mad?" So I mean, that particular situation worked out, even though in fact, the Kosi and Ryan project is no longer a thing. But that microcosm of it turned out to not be an issue.
Now, and then you mentioned about writing songs about a breakup that you believed you would get back together again. This is something I always wonder, and we could also put you and Ryan in the same category. Let's just make it like a relationship, not romantic. Do you think if you break up with somebody, let it be maybe a friend, a lover, a spouse, do you think that sometimes maybe the relationship has run its course? I feel like some people, when they break up with somebody, maybe even when they get a divorce or when they just stop talking to somebody, they feel like they invested so much in the relationship and in fact it's a failure. You hear about failed marriages instead of talking about marriage that has ended. So do you see it as a failure? Do you see a terminated relationship as a failure or as something that has just run its course? Do you understand my question?
Well, I mean, I think it depends on a lot of things. It depends on how the relationship ended and how long ago the relationship ended. I mean, the relationship that I had with the gentleman I wrote the song Once and Future about, I can now, look back on that and see, well, I did a lot of things wrong, but, he did a lot of things wrong too. And it's like, yeah, that relationship it was going to end. And even if I don't think of in terms of it was going to end, well, it's over anyway. Since then I've done so much with my life.
But if you're looking at it as something that has ended, that is a failure, or just looking at it from the negative perspective, what about the good things you and the person did together? What about the good things that came out of the relationship, if any? So is it fair to just classify the relationship as a failed relationship? I don't know if you...
Well, I mean, I'm like that particular relationship, I wouldn't go ahead and classify it as a failed relationship. Okay. I would say it happened and now it's over.
Okay. I see.
That doesn't necessarily mean it's a failure.
Okay.
And actually, that particular relationship has been my longest one to date. Because I was with that gentleman for 4 years. And I haven't been with anybody so far for 4 years.
4 years.
And so I don't think that was a failure at all.
Okay.
Probably if you had asked me, just shortly after the end of the relationship, I would have told you everything that was wrong about myself, because I was in a very deep depression after that relationship ended. I would have told you how terrible a person I was for letting him go, all the bad things I had done to him, blah, blah, blah. And then shortly after that period, I would have told you, oh, well, he wasn't no angel himself. And, but, now that it's been it's just like, well, kind of it was a thing. There were good things and there were bad things, but, it happened and now it's over. And I don't even think about it in those terms anymore because it was so long ago,
Your creation process, most of your songs seem like they come out of personal experience, say relationships and stuff like that. Can you tell me more about your creation process? How do you write? How do you think of your lyrics? How do you create your song? Does the lyric come first and then the music? And if you're going to interpret a song that has already been done, how do you approach it? Because this is one other thing I wanted to say. Your interpretation of songs are very unique, very different, and they're unique.
I can say that the songs that seem to resonate most with people, at least the ones that I get the most comments about, tend to be the ones that I can remember exactly where I was, in not only in physical space but also in my life when I wrote them. And a lot of the time, like when that happens, when it's just one of those things, it's just a flood of inspiration all at once, then the lyrics and melody will happen simultaneously. I'll be thinking something and or feeling something, and I'll just start singing it. And then, of course, I'll refine it later into, meter and rhyme and everything like that. But
you play the guitar?
I kind of play the guitar.
Okay.
I mean, people see me playing the guitar and assume that I'm a guitarist, but I really don't know that many chords. I just picked up the guitar fairly recently.
But you play your songs. That's what counts.
That's the thing. I don't play most of my songs.
Okay.
Most of my songs, I don't have the ability to play on guitar. The last few songs that I wrote, I purposely wrote using the chords I know on guitar so that I could play them. But most of the songs that I've written, because I've been writing since college.
How do you document the melodies?
Well, I have a formal training in music.
Okay.
So
okay.
I can hear music in
And
my
just
head,
write,
and I
okay.
can think about it theoretically, and I can write it
All
down,
right,
and
that's
then I
more-
can give it to someone who can read it.
Okay, that's actually superior to playing an instrument. because you could just sit in the subway and just write your music, like just write the notes without.
Well, yeah, that's true, but
Yeah.
it also means that you always have to depend on somebody, which is one of
Okay.
the reasons why my relationship with Ryan was so,
But you know
I guess
what?
codependent
I
is
don't
the
think
word
you
I'm
have
looking
to.
for.
I have seen you sing a cappella. That a cappella was off the chain.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I've
Thank
seen you do it. You played 2 songs that day. This was at Vivaldi. You sang the first one a cappella, and then the second one you played guitar.
Sounds like something I would have done.
Yeah.
Probably the first one that I played, I don't, I know what the chords are, but
Yeah.
I don't know how to play them on guitar.
Okay, I see. You played the piano?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The reason I picked up guitar is
Yeah.
because I don't have a piano.
Okay, I see.
I learned a little bit of piano in high school. I took piano lessons when I was about 16. But you can't practice if you don't
If
have
you
an
don't have
instrument
the
to
instrument.
practice on.
That was my problem.
And I've moved so many times that there were times I had a keyboard, a little like 60 key keyboard, and then there were times when I just didn't have a
anything.
keyboard.
Yeah.
And so it's like there's only so much you
Yeah.
can do when you don't have an instrument to practice on.
Yeah. So, how about songs that people don't comment on? You talked about songs, the songs that get more comments. See, I'm listening and I'm remembering. So, so most of you said that some of them, the music and the melody and the lyrics, they come to you at once, which I find very very interesting and very fantastic, because it does that almost never happens to me.
Well, how does it happen for you?
The melody usually comes first. Like sometimes if I'm on an instrument, I play with chords, and then the melody comes on the chord. The chords, like I get a chord that I really like, and then I put the melody on it, and then I write lyrics to the melody after.
Okay.
Sometimes, like the last song I wrote that I recorded that I actually shared with you. I don't know if you remember the song. It's called "Wait."
Yes, I remember that.
Okay, yeah, and I
Love
wrote
that song.
You like it?
Yes.
Thank you. I remember you said something about it, and I took it as a compliment. Now I've confirmed it's a compliment. But what
did I say?
You said I think you said you wish you would be able to write that direct.
Oh,
I
yeah.
took it as a compliment, but then later I'm like, well, was that a shade? As the kids call it shade. So
If that is a shade,
Yeah.
then that is such a passive aggressive shade.
Shade. It sounds like-
that would be so I'd be really proud of myself
well,
for coming up with a shade like
because
that.
it could mean that, oh, you're not poetic enough. But that was what I was going for, actually. So I took it. I know it's a compliment, because I was like, okay, this is what I have in my head. I'm not even gonna sugarcoat this. I'm just gonna give it to you the way it's coming to me. If you like it, if you can't take it, that's your problem. I don't care. So that's how I create.
I do wish I could be that direct.
Wow, thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I wish I could be as poetic as you. So for me, one comes before the other. Always. It's always I do this, and then I add this, and then I add the other one. So, and I find it fascinating that everything could come together for you. That's good.
Well, I mean, that doesn't happen every single time.
Yeah, of course.
I do have one song which is unofficially on my first album. It's the hidden track on my first album. It's called "I Wrote You a Song," and I perform it fairly often with my band, but I rarely perform it on my own because I would have to do it a cappella because I don't know how to play the chords. But that song, I guess I can say that the words and melody kind of sort of came together because I do remember where I was when I wrote that too. But before that happened, I had written a poem that, because most people don't get to see my poetry because it's not very good. I had written a poem that was on the same subject. That obviously wasn't all the same words, because it wasn't a poem in rhyme. It was just me spouting my bullshit onto a piece of paper. And then later, something else happened that triggered the same feeling that was that poem, and this time it came out in words and melody.
I see.
But then when I finished the song, it was mostly based on the poem that I had already written.
Oh, great. Yeah. Now let's talk about your poem. I know you just dismissed it. You're just like, do you perform like in poetry slams and stuff like that? Okay.
No. My poetry is not very spoken wordable.
Okay, I see.
And it's also not very good. So
why do you say it's not very good?
I don't know. I write it and then I look at it and go, ugh.
That's how prolific people are. Like that's how you create something, you're like, and then you keep it there, and then you create another one, and then that's what makes you keep creating. At least I'm not saying I'm prolific with my art or anything, but usually that's kind of what drives me. So I think I don't see anything wrong with you not thinking it's good, but that doesn't mean it's not good.
That's a good point.
Yeah. All right. So we're now going to go back to the beginning. We're going to talk about family, your family background, or like you were born in the Bronx. You're from New York, from the Bronx.
Yeah. I was born in the Bronx. I lived in the Bronx for less than a year, though. Before I was a full year old, I moved to Southeast Queens, Laurelton, Queens, which is where I grew up.
Okay.
And since there, I have lived pretty much everywhere except for Staten Island. I've lived in Flatbush, Brooklyn. I've lived in Canarsie, Brooklyn. I've lived in 3 different addresses in Harlem.
Wow.
And then I went back to the South Bronx, although where my parents were living when I was born, that was more like, Fordham Hill, which is more north. And then I moved to the South Bronx, and I was there for like a year and a half. And now I'm on the Upper West Side, which to anyone who's not a New Yorker doesn't make any sense, because it's in the middle. It's not upper anything.
Yeah.
But I was actually just thinking about that, on the way up here.
This is upper. This is Washington Heights.
Yeah, I mean, are your listeners out to know where you are?
What? Yeah, of course. Yeah,
I guess because 191st Street is not as far up as you can go in Manhattan, and yet somehow 79th Street is the Upper West Side.
Upper West Side. Yeah,
it doesn't make any sense.
Manhattan goes up to I think 225th Street, Marble Hill. But Upper West Side is like 70 something or 90.
Yeah, it's pretty much everything that's west of the park is considered the Upper West Side. And it's like most of Manhattan is north of the park.
Yeah, it's a New York thing. People want to just and you see all these new names springing up for neighborhoods. Like I feel like every neighborhood has its own little name. Like they just make up a name.
Sometimes it's a block. Little Korea is one block.
Like Bowery.
Yeah.
Bowery is like a street, right?
Bowery is a street. Yeah. Or Nolita.
Nolita, yeah.
What even is that?
Interesting.
Little Italy has actually now been reduced to just what is the name of that street? It's not Mulberry, is it?
I don't know.
Whatever that street is where Little Italy is, it's pretty much just that one street now.
Wow. Interesting. Yeah. That has been my culture shock in New York about how everything is so fragmented. And before, I used to think that, this was a long time ago, I used to think that Harlem was its own borough.
Well, that's why the Upper West Side is called the Upper West Side.
Because they don't want to be associated with Harlem.
Back in the day, it's like, first of all, before Harlem was black, it was a suburb.
Yeah.
And then the black people moved in and the white people moved out.
Yeah.
And it's part of New York now, but it's it was still kind of like, oh well, that's not
Exactly.
really New York. That's
It's not really.
Harlem, that's a completely different thing.
Exactly.
So
Meanwhile, it's like
96th Street is about the furthest up you can
you
go.
can go.
And still see other white people.
It's very interesting because Harlem is actually the center of Manhattan, because Manhattan goes up to like 225th Street, so 125th is kind of in the center.
Yeah, that's pretty much the center.
Yeah. So I wanted to ask you something about the Bronx. Or maybe we should reserve this for another time. I have a lot of things I wanted to ask you. So you went to you probably did your middle school and your elementary school, middle school, and high school in Queens?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, no, high school I was on the Upper East Side.
Oh, okay, cool. So you took the bus to...
Yeah, I took the subway.
The subway, wow, every day.
Every day.
From Queens.
Yeah, and the subways were a lot slower back then than they are now. So now, for me to get from the Upper East Side to where my parents still live would probably take me about, I don't know, an hour and a half. Back then, it was more like 2 hours and a half.
When did you wake up each day?
About 5:30. But yes, I was a 13-year-old waking up at 5:30 in the morning to get to high school on the Upper East Side.
Interesting. Wow. That's I don't know what to say about that. But that's determination on your part and the parts of your parents.
Well, I mean, it had nothing to do with determination. I didn't really have a choice. I had to get to school.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And now let's talk about your parents.
Okay.
You told me before. It's okay if you don't want to. If I could cut this part out about about your origin. Your dad is Ghanaian.
Yeah, my father's Ghanaian. My mother's Trini.
Oh, from Trinidad. Oh, okay. Wow. So were they both like immigrants?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
You'll never believe where they met. You'll never believe it.
Tell me.
My father's from Africa. My mother's from the West Indies. They met in motherfucking Buffalo, New York.
There's nothing wrong with that. They met in the U.S.
But it's like, what were you both doing in Buffalo, New York?
Yeah, that's a question you should ask a lot of Africans.
It's like you decided that you were going to leave your country and find the coldest motherfucking place you could find to be.
I see what you're talking about. I see. Yeah, Buffalo is pretty cold, and during the winters in Buffalo, it's like messy. Really messy and cold, really slushy.
What's even better than that is that the year my father arrived was the blizzard of the blizzard of '78, which was like a famous record-breaking blizzard.
Yeah,
in Buffalo,
wow.
like it's already nuts in Buffalo just on a regular year.
I hear.
He just had to show up during the record-breaking blizzard of '78.
Has he told you stories about that?
Yeah.
Oh. Wow.
My mother's told me stories as well. She told me this one story of the first time they left her in the dorm by herself.
Oh.
And
I think every African has had that experience.
And she's just like walking around the dorm and she's like trying to keep moving and she's got all of her jackets on and she can't imagine how is anybody living in this cold. And then finally her roommates come back and they walk in and they go, "It's cold in here. Stella, why do you turn the heat on?"
Oh my God.
And she's like, "Turn the what?"
Wow.
Because where I come from, the sun does that job.
Yeah. Oh my God. This is funny. Oh my God. And what happened?
Well, somebody turned on the heat.
Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. Could you imagine? Could you imagine now, as litigious as we've gotten, she could actually maybe sue for not having an orientation, not having been told that at orientation. Yeah.
Well, actually, that's a possibility that but that they probably just assumed that it's like, oh well, everyone knows how to turn on the heat. It's just like, no, everyone does not.
Everyone doesn't. Yeah. Sometimes you don't even. Sometimes you live in a house and you have to learn how to turn on the heat for that particular place. Yeah.
Or even that heat could be turned on because she came from a place that's hot.
Yes,
they don't turn on the heat in Trinidad. They just don't.
They just don't. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. I want to talk more about your family.
Okay.
2 immigrant parents. when you were growing up, you must have felt a little bit, maybe not. I was saying you must have felt you must have noticed, or you must had noticed that you were kind of a little bit different from the other kids in school, but maybe not, because this is New York. So, do you have a unique experience of that unique combo, that Ghanaian / Trinidadian combo?
On some level, I have to say yes,
Okay.
because interestingly enough, I have not met at least in my youth, I've probably met more as an adult than I had, when I was a kid. But I as a kid, I didn't meet too many people whose parents were from two different continents. Most of the time, I knew lots of immigrant, children of immigrants, and I knew lots of immigrant children who had
And these are
moved
two
over
different
when they
continents that are different from. They're both different,
Yeah.
and then they're different from
from
where
where
you
are.
live. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So, I knew lots of people who, like, for example, my the ex-boyfriend I was speaking of earlier, both of his parents were from Barbados. And so he could very easily call himself Bayesian American. His parents are from Barbados, and
Yeah.
he was raised in America. But and that was the truth of most of the people that I knew.
I see.
Either they themselves were from the same place where their parents were from, and they had moved over when they were 4 or 5 or something, or both of their parents were from the same place, and so there was still this kind of unified culture that was coming through their parents. And then, of course, they had to, they still had to rectify that with the American culture, which was being fed to them at school. But in my case, it wasn't just 2, it was 3, because my parents weren't from the same place. And I don't speak my father's language. And so that's one of the reasons why, people just, oh, so do you speak African? First of all, that's not a language. Second of all, no, I don't.
I don't. Deal with it. Yeah, I see. Now, I don't know if I should save this for later, but maybe I should ask you now that I can remember, and feel free to decline.
Okay.
Do you have any impersonations of your dad? I want to hear. Like, I want to hear.
I can't do his accent.
Yeah, maybe just tell me something that he's probably said once that you just find very funny, being more American than he is. Like, I'm sure there are very funny things he would say, or maybe when I was growing up, it didn't happen like this, or stuff like that, or these kids of these days, you guys are all spoiled,
Well, he, like everybody else, his father used to, walk uphill both ways to get to and from school.
I see. He would walk, not as opposed to taking the bus or taking.
I don't like. I feel like everybody's father makes up stories. Like
Yeah.
that.
Oh,
Like, I
okay.
have no idea.
You mean okay. You mean their childhood story where they walk like 10 miles to get to school?
Yeah, I had to walk 10 miles to get to school in the snow, in the summer heat, uphill,
Yeah, true,
both
true.
ways.
Both-
And it's just
see.
like, come on now.
Yeah.
But I do remember one time, this was kind of funny, because my father was always very anti-colonialist, which is one of the reasons why I don't have
What does he
an
do?
English name. Huh?
What does he do?
He's an engineer.
Okay.
And a business owner. He owns an engineering company.
Oh, wow.
But he's very anti-colonialist, which is one of the
of course.
reasons why I guess the only reason why I don't have an English name.
Guess what? I was born in Nigeria and I have an English name.
Yeah, I believe all of my cousins have English names. Like, I have a cousin who has exactly
Yeah.
the same name as me, except her name is Grace.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, he was always an anti-colonialist, and he oh good Lord, I can't remember what I was going to say.
I think it will come. Yeah. Now, I want to talk a little bit.
I guess it wasn't important.
Yeah, but I think we'll come back to that. As you can notice, there's no direction. This is just a conversation. That's how I like it. Yeah. So
That's the way.
I like it.
Sorry. I'm a walking musical is part of the problem.
That's how it should be.
My ex-husband used to call me a Looney Tune because
Looney
for any given moment I could think of a song and start singing it randomly.
That shows how musical you are,
And
and that
it is
shows
what
how
it
it goes back to the honesty I'm talking about. if you're honest with your art, it's part of you. It becomes a part of you. There's no shame in the game. That's how I see it. So I respect that honesty. Yeah. Do you have siblings?
Yes, I have one of each.
Oh, okay, cool. Older, younger?
One of each.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I have an older brother and a younger sister.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Neither one of them also has an English name. I guess Kosi is my English name.
No, Kosi is like the short form of Akosua, right? Like
but it's a non-traditional short form. A
There's a
Ghanaian
name,
person would
Kosi.
call me a Kos.
Oh, okay. Kosi is a Yoruba. In Yoruba, Kosi means something. I don't know what it means. I'm not Yoruba. Yoruba is a Nigerian language. Yeah, I don't know what Kosi means.
It's also a South African language, apparently, that there's a South African boy's name called Nkosi.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
and so people are just like, oh, your name is Kosi. That's short for Nkosi. You're South African.
Wow.
No. And no.
Interesting. Yeah. I had a question for you.
Okay.
How do your parents how do they relate to your being an artist? Have they been supportive? Were they shocked the first time they realized that, okay, this is what she's going to end up doing? Or when you came to them and told them, hey, I just want to do music?
My mother has been supportive, and I actually have a funny story about that.
Okay.
When I was in high school, because I pretty much known I wanted to be a musician since high school, and I used to do like little school shows or whatever. I was in the school choir, and I was in the jazz band and this, that. And I remember my mother one time walked up to one of my music teachers and was just like, so Kosi has said that she wants to, for real be a musician. Now, I think she's really good. But I'm her mother, and I think everything she does is good. What do you think?
Wow. She is hardcore. She is so real. She's so real. That's so cool.
And it's like, I mean, you may as well be honest, right?
Yes,
it's just like,
yes.
It's like, I think she's good, but I'm clearly biased.
Yeah.
So what do you think?
Yeah. Wow. And I think she did that because she saw something. She saw that there's no way she could maybe discourage you from doing it. Like maybe she wouldn't. She just knew that she wouldn't be able to convince you to do something else.
Honestly, I don't know. It's kind of hard to tell with my parents because I've been generally rebellious about a lot of things. Like I was the person who, I would be like, I don't understand why I'm being asked to do, this really stupid homework assignment, and therefore I'm just not going to do it. And everyone would be like, "But what do you mean? She's like, this is important.
Yeah.
Why?
Because you're in school, because that's what you're supposed to do."
I'm just saying. I was that person who was just like, I don't think it's important, so I'm just not gonna do it. Like I was the person who got D's in, not D's, like C's in social studies and A's in music. And they would look at me like, clearly you do have the capacity to get better grades. So why don't you apply yourself? And I'm like, I don't think it's worth my time. Now I understand the purpose of, learning about history and all that other stuff. But at the time I was just like, I just don't want to do this. So, I mean, it's a possibility that she could have just seen it as, a passing whatever. But, apparently, she actually, because
this was in high school.
Yeah, this was in high school, and she didn't grow up with jazz because she's Trinidadian.
Okay.
So her music would be calypso and reggae and other types. And she came to America. She absolutely did not understand American music. She even told a story about one time one of her American friends in college inviting her to hear the gospel choir at their church. And being like, oh yeah, you got to hear this choir, blah, blah, blah. And she got there and she's like, why is everyone yelling? Like she just, she didn't understand.
Are your
American
parents
music
Catholic?
at all. Huh?
Are they Catholic? Your
No.
parents, okay.
I mean, they're Christian, but they're not Catholic.
Yeah.
And the music in just in the West Indies and Africa is just completely different from the U.S.
Definitely, yeah.
And so she totally didn't understand jazz at all. I remember her describing it one time as everybody plays a song and then some other things happen and then they play the song again.
And but it's true though. It's true though. You play the head, then everybody solos and communicate, and then they play the head again and end it.
But as far as like what was going on in the solos, she was just like it does not compete. And yet she came to all of my shows when I was in in high school and college. She doesn't come to all of my shows now. For one, because I'm an adult, and two, because
it's your job, and it's your job now.
Yeah,
so you don't go to people's job like that. You don't. You understand? You don't.
Well, I do want people to come to my shows.
No, I understand.
But
I understand.
She can't make it
it's
to
your
every
job.
single.
You can't. That's how I look at it. Is that I can make my sibling, like my brother, or if I had a girlfriend, I can make the person just come to all my shows because it's my job.
Right.
The person doesn't make me come to their shows or to their job.
Right.
It's like having a fan who goes to all your shows. It's almost impossible.
Right.
Yeah.
Like she comes to the ones she can make. She doesn't come to all of them.
That's good though. That's really good. Yeah.
What's interesting about that is that my father has not heard either of my albums. At least the last time I spoke to him, he hadn't heard either of my albums.
Interesting.
And what's strange about that is that my father and my mother still live in the same place. My sister, at the last time I spoke to them, my sister was still living there. She has since moved, but this was just a few months ago. At the time, she was still living there. My brother was also still living there. I was the only person who was out of the house. And I did a Rocket Hub campaign to do my second album. And every single one of them, my mother, my sister, and my brother, all donated to the Rocket Hub campaign. And so I ended up sending all of them a CD, which means there are 3 copies of my CD. In that house. And I think about 2 copies of my first CD because my mother bought one from me and my sister bought one from me. And so there's 5 copies of my CD.
Have you ever asked him, what's up?
Well, I did ask him. I was like, have you heard my CD? And he's like, no, I haven't heard it. And I'm like,
gosh.
Why not? And he's just like, I don't know.
Some people don't listen to music that much. And some people, they just find one music they like and they listen to it, they gravitate towards it.
And, my father's not, he's not into jazz. He's into, he's a Ghanaian, he's an Ashanti person. He's into high life.
High life.
Like old school high life.
Old school high life.
Hip life is not real music to him.
No, hip and the name hip life is just not, I don't even know why they have life, because it's not high life, it's just something else, High life has a certain...
I can hear, like, it's not straight hip hop. It does definitely have the high life influences.
Like the chord. I guess you're right. Like Nigerian, like the Nigerian modern music is kind of more high life. That because of the chord. If you're approaching it from the chord perspective, it's like 1-4-5-1, or 1-5-1-4, 1-4-1-5.
You'd be amazed at how many different styles of music use exactly that progression.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah. True. True.
Like
true.
Actually,
you're right.
all of them.
All of them. All of them. You're right.
But like to me, high life definitely sounds like hip hop and definitely sounds like high life. It is, as far as she's concerned, it's not. It's not real music. Only high life is music. Hip life is not music.
Not music. Interesting. Yeah. I want to talk about something that got me interested in you.
Okay.
Your outspokenness about the issues of our day, and how fearless you are about it, at least on the platform that on which I associate with you, namely Facebook. Whenever I want to talk about this, I don't even have a question. I just know that, like, the whole incident about, I guess, the injustices of our society, how, like the events that led to the Black Lives Matter movement, and how outspoken you've been about it. Maybe an actual question I can ask is, what do you think we as I don't want to use the word minority. We as Black people in America, what can we do, and what can the society do to kind of change this to kind of make this not happen anymore, not to even curb it, to just stop it, put a stop to it. I don't know if you have, I have my own, what I believe in, I don't know if you've given it a thought, or you just say whatever you want to say about the issue.
I have thought about it. As far as what we as Black people can do, that's a tricky question.
True, because it's tough. It's at the end, it's always us. It's always the pressure is always on us. It's
and I feel like we live in a society that loves to blame the victim.
Both women, Black people.
Yeah, which is how which is how a completely unrelated topic, but a woman gets raped and the first thing you ask is, what was she wearing?
Yeah.
Was she drunk? Why was she hanging out with those people? As though somehow any of those things makes it her fault that she was. And I kind of feel like the same mentality applies. Where you have Black people in this country, we've been oppressed for hundreds of years in this country, and yet people still keep asking the question: what do Black people need to do to change our situation? And it's like, I actually got into an argument with a white gentleman about this.
I think I saw it.
Because if you're going to really have an honest conversation about race, then you have to say that, yes, racism in America is a white American invention. And white privilege came from
that.
Racism in America. And white privilege is the problem. And you can't really do anything until you address that. And so as far as what Black people can do, I feel like at this point, all we can do is, raise awareness and try to convince the new generation of white people who may not necessarily understand that it's just like, yes, you're in this position because such and such happened long ago, and no, I realize it's not your fault directly, but you are directly benefiting from it in a way that the rest of us are not. And the only way to level the playing field is to not just fill up the valleys, but also level the mountains. Well, and I feel like there's a lot of white people who are actively resisting that, and I can't even really get mad at them, because I feel like, if I had an advantage position and I was born into an advantage position, there's a lot of advantage positions that I was born into, that I can't say that I'm like entirely underprivileged,
like being educated.
Yeah, that being educated, the fact that that I was able to be educated in the U.S. as opposed to some place where the education system is not quite as good as ours. The fact that the international language is my only language. That I only know one language, and it's the language that everyone defaults to. Yeah. And so that's a privilege to me, and so I'm not saying that I'm entirely underprivileged. That's
very
but when
interesting.
You have
a lot of people don't see that. Like
a lot of people, they'll go really to other countries and actually get upset when people don't speak to them in English.
I know. Yeah.
And you have to actually stop and think, why should they speak to you in English? You tell people that when they come to your country, they have to learn your language. When you go to their country, you have to learn their language. And so I kind of feel like, a lot of white people don't even recognize white privilege as a thing that it's like, no, everyone doesn't have that privilege. And in order to correct the problem, you can't just, you can't correct the problem by putting #race together on your coffee cups. You actually have to get rid of...
I still don't understand that thing.
I understand it completely. That, to me, is just a privileged white person wanting to do something about race without actually causing any pain or loss to himself.
Does he... Wait. How is that going to help, though? Like, whatever they're doing? Like, what, like, I don't even understand the procedure they're taking. Like, what the baristas are supposed to, when they give you your coffee, they're supposed to start up a race conversation with you.
Which doesn't make any sense, because who goes into a coffee shop to have a conversation with the barista about any damn thing? It's like, I don't want to hear about race. I don't want to hear about the weather.
Yes.
I don't want to hear about your kids.
Yeah.
I don't need you asking me about my kids. I mean, I don't have any kids,
Yeah.
but, I don't want to hear about what's going on in the corner. I want my damn coffee.
Exactly.
You see what I'm saying? And so that's just one of those things. Like, I feel like he just did that because he wanted somebody to pat him on the back for starting a conversation. And that's basically what happened in the conversation that you were referencing. It's just like, he was saying, yeah, we should totally pat this guy on the back for starting a conversation. And I'm like, yeah. And then he left the conversation after fewer than 24 hours. So why should we pat him on the back? Oh, we should find him a way to get paid. He's already getting paid off of, the labor of all of these black and brown people in Africa and Indonesia and, clearly overcharging on his coffee because there's no good reason why a cup of coffee should cost $2 and change. How much did it cost him to make it?
I know.
A few cents.
True.
You see what I'm saying? And then you think about the fact that a Starbucks appearing in a neighborhood is usually a pretty good indication
of
that,
gentrification
is about to happen in this neighborhood. But you want to give him not only a pat on the back, but also more money for starting a conversation. And it's like, what's conversing going to do? We still haven't gotten our goddamn reparations yet, and you want to converse?
It's like the reparation, when people hear it, like the first time I heard it, I thought it was something that was made up. You think
it's made up until you realize that the Jews got reparations.
Yes,
And the whole 40 acres and a mule thing, that was supposed to happen.
That was supposed to happen.
That was
it started happening, and then they took it all away.
They took it all away because white people were losing land.
Exactly.
And it's like, no, you have no right to take away our land, even though the fact that your land is basically your land because you had black slaves working on it to give you the money to buy more land. But they didn't see it that way. As far as they were concerned, my granddaddy gave me this land and it's mine.
This is one of the reasons, one of the things, one of the reasons why I'm doing something like this, because I know that I can have this kind of conversations with an artist. I can kind of select the kind of person that would come here and be kind of upfront about these issues or some issues that affect us, and even if I don't touch anybody, at least I'm sure one of your fans is going to listen to this and one of mine would listen to it, and maybe the conversation will continue from there. So, and I really appreciate you.
I think it makes a difference that I'm not like a huge Billboard top 40 commercial artist because, at the level that I'm at, I can pretty much say what I want.
That's what I said to myself.
Most people are not even gonna hear what I say.
They will hear it, but the fact is that you're not putting a lot at stake, or nobody's gonna. You're not like the people, the big people, the big artists, the really famous artists. Some of them have the intention to say something. They would like to say something, but maybe their lawyers and their agents always convince them.
It's like, look, you get paid to tap dance and shut your mouth.
Yeah. You can't.
You want to keep getting paid.
I know.
You keep dancing.
Exactly. Shut your mouth. So.
And right now, like I said, I'm the one paying my band
exactly.
out of my own pocket.
Yeah.
So.
So you can pretty much.
So there's nobody to tell me what I can say and what I can't say.
Which is a cool thing. Yeah. Now, all right. Let's go to the fun part of the podcast. We're just gonna
give me 5 minutes.
All right, great.
So let's have some fun.
Yes, let's. This I don't know if I'll call it a game. I should get a jingle for these games. All right. The first one is this: if you were to be put in a witness protection program, all right. What life would you take? What life would you adopt? What would be your undercover life?
That's a damn good question.
Okay.
So basically, you're asking if I could have any life other than the one I have.
Maybe, yeah, exactly, yeah. What life would you pick?
That's a rough question for me.
Okay.
Because I like the life I have.
Yeah.
I feel like the life I have is I mean, obviously, I haven't been able to control every single thing that's happened in my life, but the life I have is pretty much the one I created.
I see.
And, you know, it's
So if they
mostly-
tell you, hey, we're moving you to a town in Montana, yeah.
Montana, oh,
Yeah.
good God.
Or in Colorado, you have to pick something that you do that would prevent anybody from knowing you were ever Kosi, the singer. You were ever Kosi sings. Yeah.
Well, in a past life, I was a tutor.
Okay.
So I guess I could be a
You
tutor.
tutor. Okay, that's good. Now, random question. What do you think of orange juice with pulp in it?
What do I think of orange juice with pulp in it?
But yeah, with pulp. Yeah.
I'm not so certain that orange juice with pulp is all that concerned with what I think of it.
But do you like it? Do you ever consume it? I'm asking this question because I have this assertion that nobody buys that. And whenever you go to the grocery store, there's orange juice with pulp. I'm always asking myself, who buys this? You know,
I prefer it without the pulp. Personally.
Exactly. I've asked a lot of people. Nobody I can remember likes orange juice with pulp. So I don't know.
Well, somebody must, because
I guess
the fact that they're spending money to make
and
it a
buying
project,
it. So somebody
a product, excuse me, means that someone must be buying it.
Yeah, true. Okay, I'm gonna ask you a series of questions.
Okay.
This is a game, right?
Okay.
Ready? This is a game I made up for the last two people who I had on the podcast.
Okay.
You know, they own a magazine, a publication called Mute. So I made up a game called Turn Up or Mute. So turn up is something you like, you turn it up.
Well, I know what turn up means.
Okay, exactly. Whatever you like, you get it turned up. And then if you don't like, you mute it. Okay. So I'm just going to be naming random things. Don Lemon. You know him?
You just want a short answer?
Yeah, short answer, yeah.
Okay.
Turn up, mute.
Mute.
But
although the answer is slightly more complicated than that, actually.
Okay. We may not have time. This will be for another time because I'm going to document all this and we're going to talk about it another time.
But I think I'll make my official answer mute.
Mute, okay.
I'll make that my official answer.
Lil Wayne. Mute. All right. Mustard.
Mustard.
Yeah, mustard.
Is there a leave it on the table and walk away option?
Yeah, I guess that would be mute.
I really don't care shit about mustard. Like okay. I don't hate it.
What do you use? Do you use mayonnaise?
On what?
On food as a dressing.
Well, I'm not really much for dressings. Like
okay.
on a sandwich, I'd usually just put olive oil on.
Oh, interesting. I want to learn about that.
On a hot dog, I would put ketchup, which apparently is not a thing that you do in Chicago. I went to Chicago one time and they had some hot dogs, and I was like, "Where's the ketchup?" And they're like, "We don't use ketchup here." And I'm like, "Oh,
wow,
okay."
Another thing I don't like is homemade ketchup. I don't believe in homemade ketchup. I've said this.
Is that a thing that people do?
Yeah, people make homemade ketchup and they still call it ketchup. I'm like, leave that work for Heinz.
Now I'm interested. I want to
know. How about math?
Math?
Yeah.
Turn up.
Good. Driving.
The two lowest grades I've ever gotten in a math class were both in high school as a senior. I got a B first semester, which at that point was the lowest grade I had ever gotten in math. And then the next semester I failed.
That's what's up.
And every semester before...
You failed because you were probably asking... What's the point of this math? What's the point of geometry now?
Well, I was a second semester senior. I just wasn't going to class.
Okay, that happens. It happens, yeah.
But it seems like the
grade that's the second semester senior grade doesn't usually count for anything.
I I don't know. Like
Okay.
that whole process was just something
Yeah.
that they told me was important, and I just
Where did you
didn't.
go to college? I forgot to ask.
Oh, I went to Brooklyn College.
Okay,
CUNY.
cool. CUNY. Okay, yeah. I applied for a job there and I didn't get it, but it's cool. I have a better
sorry to
job.
hear that.
Yeah. Scandal.
Scandal.
Yeah, the show.
I haven't really watched it.
Okay. How about instead of Scandal, Empire?
I've watched more Scandal than I have Empire. I
Oh,
haven't
okay.
seen a single episode of Empire.
Of Empire. Okay. So Scandal, turn up or mute?
Turn up.
Turn up. Okay. How about driving?
I don't drive.
Yeah. Okay. So mute.
Mute. I'm a New Yorker. I don't
Yeah.
drive.
Exactly. All right.
Actually, no. I should learn to drive. It's starting to become a problem because I've been
For real?
I've been doing these. I've been doing these tours, and
Okay.
most of the time I would do tours in like relatively big cities, like Chicago and
Yeah.
places like that. At least places where I can get a bus. And I just recently got a gig in a place that I found out was about 38 miles away from the nearest
I see.
bus stop.
Oh,
And I'm
wow.
like, see this is why people learn to drive.
To drive. Yeah. It's something New Yorkers don't worry about at all.
Yeah, it's like I never thought about it until I
Yeah.
started touring in
Yeah.
other places, and it's like, what do you mean there's not a bus that goes there? How can there be a place where a bus doesn't go?
Yeah. How about Taylor Swift?
Ugh.
As a New Yorker, I know you guys have beef with Taylor Swift.
Mute.
Yeah, mute. Okay. Babies.
Mute.
Mute. Oh, wow. All right. So, Kosi, you want to tell us where we can learn more about you? You want to tell me? Tell the people listening?
Well, I would really like it if you went on my website, which is Kosi-Sings, KOSI-SINGS.com.
Okay.
Once you go there, you have the option to sign up for my mailing list. If you sign up for my mailing list on my website,
I need to learn how to do a mailing list. Anyway.
Oh, it's actually not that hard to do. I can
Okay.
show you later.
Okay.
But if you sign up for my mailing list through my site, you will automatically get a free MP3 download
Nice.
that will get sent to you immediately.
Awesome. Great. All right. And I'm going to put all this on the website. You'll send me everything on email, then I'll put it on the podcast website.
Sure enough.
Yeah. Kosi, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the podcast.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Later.
You be so cold. I'll be emotional. You ignore me. Call me crazy. It's obvious what will come.